So you've already mentioned sprint qualifying, and I wanted to talk about something which I thought would be the most talked about point of the weekend: this new race format, or this new race weekend format, and how it would work in today's era of Formula One. I mentioned last week that I wasn't sure how I felt about the idea, and now I'm slightly more decisive on the matter. And this is how I feel. If sprint qualifying was the current quali format, I wouldn't be asking for it to be changed, which is exactly how I feel about the current traditional format for qualifying. It works, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the added responsibility of the drivers in the session and how they can end up at the back of the grid by making a simple mistake. Case in point, Sergio Perez, who spun in sprint quali and felt that impact throughout the whole of Sunday's race. So sprint qualifying in a nutshell for me, I really enjoyed it. I think coupled with only 2 practice sessions made it a little bit more interesting. What's your thoughts? Talk me through what you think about sprint qualifying.
I certainly didn't dislike it. It was the FIA and Formula One and all that were saying, it's not a race. I mean, it looked like a race to me. Even at the end, it was wasn't it over the radios? A lot of them were like, "What a race! What a qualifying!" So it looked very much like a race to me. I'm still not really sold on it, to be honest. It's very track specific on this one, and I feel like a couple of the examples that we pointed out as possibilities when we talked about it in that roundup did come to be the case. For example, Russell, who had an excellent qualifying, ended up dropping back on the sprint qualifying and then dropped back even more during the race. And Perez, I suppose that you mentioned that he had that kind of rather unusual crash and that put him at the back and he suffered because of that. But there's something about suffering a crash during a race, what is essentially a race as far as I'm concerned, impacting another race that just feels a bit weird when it's supposed to be a qualifying. If he'd done it during his qualifying lap, that's one thing, but he did it during a race. So they're not the same circumstances. It just feels a little bit weird to me. It's also strange to hear Hamilton going for his 8th British Grand Prix pole at the start of a sprint race. It feels like he already got it. He already got that pole, to me. Like he outfought Max in that all-important Q3 final dash to get that fastest lap. It feels like he did it. And then he kind of got to do it again. I just didn't really understand that. It just felt a bit weird. The other thing that was a bit disappointing was that everyone discovered that it was going to not going to be much of a one-stopper, or unlikely to be a one-stopper, because the softs got chewed up pretty quickly. Lots of people complaining about blistering. But instead of them discovering that during the race and it having implications on the race strategy, they discovered it during sprint qualifying, and that all got sort of slightly neutered by the sprint qualifying format instead. So it was nice to see some racing. There was certainly a lot of drama at the start. It was good to see that drivers were well up for it and were really going for taking positions. Fernando Alonso in particular had an incredible beginning. He managed to make up lots of places. But the risk-reward balance skewed pretty heavily towards risk after 2 or 3 laps, and it became pretty processional after that. So I didn't dislike it, but I'm not really sold on the idea, I have to say. I think that the race weekend should be 2 days, less practice, and just normal qualifying that we've been having. That seems to work pretty well, in my opinion. But they're going to do it 2 more times. We'll see what it's like. I may change my feeling on it as we see 2 more.